Welcome back to TLC Unfiltered. Today's episode is called Cybersecurity, a Game of Two Halves. I'm Emmanuel Sanubi.
And I'm Ian Murphy, and we welcome James Alliband from Tessian to the show.
Hi James, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Not too bad at all. Great to be here.
Great to be back. I mean, it's been ages. It's good to be back behind the desk.
It's good to be back, especially with what you guys didn't see, and that was Ian tell the most boring anecdote about the word Tessian.
I'm happy to do it again if you want.
I think you should.
Shall I?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was that dull.
It was.
Fair play. Let you be the judge. So Tessian, quite interesting, not really, is that my name's Ian, my wife's name Tess, so you'd think if I was going to start a company it'd be called Tessian. See? Totally dull. No?
And we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining, for all those people that just logged off.
Will this be on the bloopers?
I hope so. So, James, welcome. Tell us about yourself. Who is James?
Who is James? James is, well, born, as you can probably tell, in the West Midlands, as this awful accent does unfortunately carry me around. Worked in cybersecurity for the last 10, 12 years, going through various companies, Israeli companies, US companies, into a British cybersecurity company. I'm sure we'll talk about that as well today. That's quite a familiar place as well for me. Not necessarily Wembley, I wish it was, but also the referee in me as well, which again I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, live at home. Wife,
I'm going to get into the referee.
Let's get into it.
So I want to know. I always ask this question: what's the trigger that goes? I want to be a referee.
It's a great question. I played for a number of years. I wasn't great as a footballer.
That's the
trigger. That's the trigger.
As a great footballer, that's the trigger.
And refereed a charity match, and then someone, they probably wasn't right, but somebody turned around and said, you're all right at this. You're not too bad at this. 5 years later, a few promotions later, and here we are.
So what level do you ref at?
I referee at level 4, which is supply league, or in layman's terms, it's essentially regional men's football, bottom of the semi-pro, non-league system, and then assistant referee at Southern League, Iserman, Northern Premier League. Okay. So it's a decent level. Okay. I don't get necessarily the dads on the sideline chanting at me, but the players can be fun at times, interesting.
Have you ever had a player like fall over? Because I've always played rugby, so I find it hilarious when I watch a football game and somebody will get like coughed on and fall over and hold their ankle. Do you ever have that and just think, get up?
Yeah, like all the time.
Are you allowed to tell them? Because I'd kick them.
Or caution them, right? Like you can caution them as well, but yeah, all the time. We had one yesterday actually, which was a player literally went over like he'd been sniped.
Right.
Like screamed, bang, straight over.
Yeah.
Could see the sniper in the top of the clubhouse.
I'll beat this. I've fallen over in the warm-up. I was a substitute once. I was a substitute once. I just signed for Salisbury City, right? So they just signed me.
That's good level.
We were playing Worcester. I said it was a good player. Yeah. And we were playing Worcester. And the manager said, go and warm up. And I had the jumpsuit on, so I'm warming up in front of the stand, doing the skips and all that. And my stud caught on the bottom of the jumpsuit from one ankle to the other. And I went arse over tit. And then all the crowd, it was at Worcester City, all the crowd went, dickhead!
and then the manager didn't bring you on.
And all you could see was the manager who just saw me look out from the dugout and go, oh no.
And that was the last game for Salisbury, or
last game he ever played.
No.
First and last.
Yeah.
That's what I always find when I see people falling over and stuff. But then they get straight back up, like nothing's wrong. And I've always found that a weird thing to watch in football, because I think in front of my mates, like I don't, and it is very much a sort of the stereotypical guy persona, isn't it? When in front of your mates, I'm not showing any weakness. Like I've been to restaurants where you walk in and they'll say, any allergies? And even though I don't have any allergies, even if I did, if I'm walking in with a friend, I'm saying none. And then I'm going to eat peanuts and just deal with it.
Yeah.
I'm not showing any sign
Sweat it out,
of weakness.
deal with it.
And I watch the football players and I think, you're not doing that on a pitch with just your friends. There are millions of people that are watching you in HD that can see that nothing happened. How can you possibly... And plus, when we look at the money they get paid, you give me, 400 grand a week, you can cut my foot off and I will not even flinch. I'll carry on playing.
Maybe they should do it where they deduct like 50 grand a week.
If they do
If they dive it and it's proven they're diving. There you go, solve the problem.
They'll happily spend 100 grand just because they can. But I'd just like to say, for anyone watching the podcast, if you do have a peanut allergy, that is not medical advice.
Yeah,
right?
don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't eat peanuts.
Don't do that.
I mean,
and if you do...
if you're weak.
Or let people know as well.
Don't eat them, but do whatever. Don't eat gluten. Gluten's the best.
Anything to make you feel manly and strong doesn't matter.
It's like,
again, not medical advice.
It is such a pathetic man thing, though, isn't it? Where I'm not showing any weakness.
It doesn't work. This is the thing as well. I keep saying, like, it doesn't work. Like, stopping my watch, right? Every time an injury happens, whatever it might be, player goes down like that. One, I typically try to ignore them. If I can't ignore them or they're holding their head or whatever, I'm like, I'm not stopping my watch for you. I know exactly what you're trying to do. I'm like, guys, it's not working. Like, why bother? Why bother?
Do people use it as a tactic then?
Yeah.
Right,
It's a time-wasting tactic. Always a time waste. It's either penalty box trying to win a penalty.
Right.
I'd like to think I'm more experienced and fit enough to get in the right positions to see whether it, or it's a time-wasting tactic, and it's 86th minute, we're 1-0 up.
So here's a question then. Have you ever been, because that is a long time to just run around.
Yeah.
Have you ever been that knackered where you're like, blow a whistle and think, I'm going to take a bit longer explaining this just because I need to get my breath back?
So do you remember the really hot weekend last August? So it was like...
Just this is the UK, so
Yeah.
the one.
Just the one.
It lasted 12 minutes.
We remember these weekends really well. So it was like 37 degrees. I was actually at Six Ways Stadium, which is like in Worcester, so like astroturfy kind of pitch. Gets really hot in the weather. And 80th minute or so, and I am sweating buckets. I'm feeling sick. I'm like not taking up the right positions or whatever else. Play broke out, and I was like, right, I'm finding any reason to stop this game, get my breath back, and I was feeling really sick. So yeah, a few times, but not typically.
How do you do it though? How would you then stop a game to get your breath back?
Find the smallest fouls. Goalkeeper's been touched. Give him a goal kick. Give him a free kick. Corners, throw-ins. Guys, take 5 yards back. 5 yards back.
Yeah.
Just keep breaking the game up.
Allegedly, because if the FA are watching, we
Yes.
do not want them to think that you are easily...
that's
not
never
at all.
happened.
Allegedly.
Not at all.
So let's see if we can get this back to cybersecurity, right?
We should do it. We should do it.
Yeah. What from the football, you've told us what annoys you in football. I think it annoys everybody, right?
Yeah.
What annoys you in cyber?
It's a great question. I think for me, I see what you did there. Ian. So I think for me, what annoys me in cyber is it's like secluded. It's either us or them mentality.
Yeah.
It's quite similar with footballers and referees, right?
Yeah.
Footballers and referees. It's the us and them mentality, and I was in San Francisco at the RSA conference last
clang.
week.
Name
we
drop.
go. There we go.
Where were you? You never really bring it
No,
up.
I didn't bring it up at all. But one thing I noticed was, again, this us and them mentality.
When you say us and them, who is it you're referring
So I'm saying people who are in security, people who are working, whether it's within a secure operations centre, a SOC, or working as a vendor within security, anyone who's considered like they know what they're talking about,
Right.
and then the people who just don't know necessarily what they're talking about from that point of view. And it's not because they don't necessarily know what they're talking about, it's this secluded place. We use way too many acronyms. We use way too many words which are of technical detail, which people are like, what are you guys talking about? And then you think about that from like a job perspective, it's like, how do I get into this industry? This industry that looks great from the outside in, it's paid well, a lot of opportunities, but how do I direct my career in that way? And then you look and, companies are going through it or have gone through it in the past, especially through the pandemic. It's like, we're trying to hire people. What's the first thing we ask? Oh, has that person got security experience? Oh, no, I haven't worked at a security vendor, or I haven't worked within a SOC. Oh, you haven't got the 3-year cybersecurity experience. How can we hire you? And it's, that us and them mentality. So, well, how do people drive their careers into the industry when in reality it's still a growing industry, right? It's still a lot of opportunities in the industry when we are making it so secluded for other people. Let's get in.
There's a bunch of points there actually that are really interesting that you could probably talk a long time on. But one of the ones you mentioned there about being an expert or being considered an expert, right? Now, I've been in security for 30 years, right? I've come across very few proper experts in what they do, right? So if anybody, apart from yourself,
Obviously.
apart from yourself, so if anybody, I'm looking at the camera now, if anybody's telling you that they're an expert in cybersecurity, I would say give them a swerve. Give them a little swerve. If somebody's proclaiming that they're an expert or a guru, they're the people you need to stay away from, right? But also I think knowledge is power for those people. So they try and make you feel inadequate. So if you don't know stuff or you don't know the acronym they're talking about, if you ask the question, I think that's one of the annoying things for me.
Well, a lot of people play off fear, don't they?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I go into a meeting room where it could be a board meeting, but none of that board are security people, and I start using acronyms and I start using terms they don't understand, the fear of not understanding, where all the thing they do understand is this might affect your business, now makes them think we need this person. So a lot of people will do that. And you'll see people that come in from a sales perspective as well to push forward any sort of solution and use the fear of loss as a way to get into the front door rather than actually having a conversation of going, this is what we could be looking at.
That's exactly right. I think it's the fear tactic.
Sorry, he said exactly right. You did.
I think he was referring to...
No, he meant mine.
Oh, yours.
He meant
Okay.
exactly.
Exactly.
Sorry about it.
In the ballpark.
No,
I'm just trying to make you
ballpark.
feel better, Manuel. Just push it up. Keep pushing it up.
Just keep going because that's not going to go into the edit. That cleaner just walking
We might
behind
have
us.
a
Yeah, the cleaner.
Yeah.
That part.
Leave that bit in
Yeah,
because I
that-
think that's crucial. That's almost like a Morecambe and
I love how
Wise thing
she's
going on there.
cleaning
what we've
while
just
she's on the
done
phone.
is shown you a physical representation of how shadow IT works.
Get in there!
Oh, that's got to stay.
Thank you. That was
Yeah.
because we were talking, we didn't know it was there. Oh, classic.
On a phone as well. I love it. No, I
Sarah, can you come back again? We'll do that.
want to just tell the joke again.
We absolutely crushed it.
No, it's right, and it's like you look at like the board level, for example, like the CISO role. CISO role's what, just about 10 years old, and having that person on the board that has that adequate security experience. But then let's be honest, are they really having that technical security experience at board level? No, they're not. You know, in reality, they're able to digest that information. But again, like from a vendor point of view, whoever it may be, going in with those buzzwords and, fear of not doing anything, fear of not change, fear of this, you're just driving this fear mentality within organisations, which is just totally unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, there's no perfect scenario to having the most perfect cybersecurity posture or being indefensible to cyber attacks. It's just not about that at all. It's not about, this latest buzzword in technology is going to save you and whatever else. It's quite the opposite in reality.
I think also as well, it's unrealistic for firms to consider that they'll never have a breach or never be attacked, or even if attackers are knocking on the door every minute, right? They're going to get through at some point. And for you to think that or for the other executives on the board to think that you can never ever stop that is really, and I think that's the CISO's job. The CISO's job
Absolutely is
not only to lead their security people, but it's also to communicate the risk to the board. And so most people see security as the division that says no. For me, I always think of it as the brakes on a car that allow you to go faster.
Yeah.
So they allow the business to go faster and stop you safely. That's the idea of it.
You've also got the rest of the board that sometimes don't listen.
Yeah.
or don't care.
Yeah.
Simply don't care. Like, it's just see it as another cost.
Yeah.
You're asking me for another 150 grand, whatever it might be. It's another cost. What's the benefit?
The don't care bit is interesting. So here's one of the things that annoys me in cyber. Everybody's job is cybersecurity.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
No.
My job's cybersecurity. His job is cybersecurity when he was in cyber and not a great big stand-up comedian who's played at live
On the TV.
I don't really like to bring it up.
No,
it
doesn't like
always
to do-
comes up every episode.
Live-
I was on Market
BBC,
Polo.
yeah.
Tour
live at the Apollo.
around the UK now.
Yeah.
Doesn't like to bring it up.
It-
Got
I
tickets.
never-
Tickets
I never
available.
really bring
Still
it up.
tickets
Didn't give you
available.
free tickets,
It's
though, did
mainly because, I was going to give you free tickets, and I was like, do you know what? I probably should feed my children.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm with you on that one.
With caviar, by the way. You should feed his kids with caviar.
With caviar.
What else am I meant to give them?
As long as you sign the I'm good. Sign the
Right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
never really bring it up. I'm far too humble. Like, if there was an award for the most humble person, I probably wouldn't accept it.
He'd probably get me to go up and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian, if you take that for me.
Yeah. Honestly. So, yeah, that's the bit that annoys me.
It's interesting as well when you think about it, because like security culture, we talk about it so much, don't we? Security, building a better, stronger security culture in the organisation. But when you think about this, I always remember as a bank who's headquartered in Dublin as well, and they used to have like a Tuesday open. You could come and look at the technology they're trying to build across the organisation, and they just always used to talk about the technology. Oh, this is what it does. This is what it solves.
Yeah.
I'm like, one of the times we were there, I was like, what's in it for them? What's in it for that guy in investment banking or whichever department they're working, or girl that's in whichever department she's working in? It's what's in it for them? What are you actually doing? What are you actually helping them? Because we're just talking about technology. We're just talking about what this solves or might solve in that perspective. But in reality, like if we're asking you to, let's say, download an application on a mobile phone to protect you, what does the other person think? Oh, well, that's my privacy gone. You've seen everything I see. Again, the us and them mentality in that perspective as well. But it's like, you see everything I see. You can see my pictures. You can see this. You can see that. I don't want you to see any of that. It's maybe my personal phone. It might be a work phone. It doesn't really matter. And it's like, the reality is like, from a company point of view, it's, well, that's what's actually in it for them. Not what's in it for me as security analyst or CISO. What's in it for me is, well, I'm making investments in the technology and I'm looking to protect the organisation. What's in it for everyone, however big the organisation is?
But that's how you build a culture. You build a culture, and it's nothing to do with security. You build a culture by what's in it for the people you're in charge of, not what's good for the business.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
You've got...
I'm trying.
Exactly right.
I've got it so right. I'm exactly right.
There as well. And that's the thing. It is very much. It goes over culture as well. You think in community, because if you, for example, you take a street, there is a common goal for everyone that lives on that street for their houses to be secure.
Yeah.
But when it comes to business, it is very much about, I want to have more profit than the next company, so I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah.
And there isn't that sort of sense of real community within business of people sharing ideas and sharing platforms, because it is it's like you said, if you see a company that offers an app for free, you're like, why? Because it costs you money to do that. What are you actually getting from that? What are you going to do for my data?
You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're right.
100% unequivocally. I can't even say that word.
Penkethman.
What is that word?
Unequivocally.
That's not it.
It is, of course it is.
Unequivocally.
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 Yeah. Is that the word?
You're getting electrocution lessons from a Scouser.
Electrocution lessons. Unequivocally. There's
Unequivocally.
always one word, isn't there? I don't like.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Unbelievable.
100% right.
Yeah.
Is where we're going with that.
Yeah.
But you haven't got that sense of, and that's the thing we spoke about it a little while ago, where if someone breaks into a house, so for example, someone broke into a car down my street, and that neighbours group popped off, and everyone was sharing pictures from their CCTV. So we saw everything at every single angle, and pieced how they got down the road and where they want to, and that car was essentially found. You don't have that in business.
Nope.
You're like, this has happened. Everyone gets as far away from them as you can, and then they go into press because you're now like, oh, how can we go in and get their custom base?
Do you think the competitive edge in business, and we see this again in like the vendor world, no matter whether it's security or not, it doesn't really matter. The vendor world where we're always competing. Yeah. Everyone's competing for business. Everyone's competing for, and then it's everyone's knocking like bullet points out on these are where the weaknesses of this vendor are. And then reality is, it's like, well, we're actually all on, I'm looking at it from like a security point, we're all on the same mission.
Yeah.
You know, if in security, we're looking to make the world a safer place from cyber attacks. So like as vendors, we're all on the same mission. And it sometimes baffles me when it's like, well, we're all competing against each other and fine, great. Like the healthy competitive edge is good.
Yeah.
But if we're taking that, and maybe it's a question for us all to discuss, is like, have we taken that too far? And then from a business point of view, like, are we just not in it together in the reality of it, which causes the issues? It causes that, like you couldn't imagine if you lined up 10 vendors in the street and one of the cars was stolen. Like, they just wouldn't be working together.
So you couldn't have that community in the street if you had people living there for 18 months and moving on, right? You couldn't have that.
No.
And I would dare say the majority of people in your street have been living there 5 years plus or more, right?
Yes, exactly.
Whatever the average tenure is, probably somebody will let us know, but I'm sure it's around 18 months, 2 years. And you see the people going from vendor to vendor, primarily because they're getting paid more or they've got a better commission or whatever.
Job titles.
Or IPOs or job titles or stuff like that. So you're not building any community within...
Well, the thing is as well, so if you go back to the analogy of having it down a street, so we've one of my neighbours has literally moved in and within a year has moved out. But the moment they moved in, they were put into that WhatsApp group. Everyone was very, very welcoming. And now straight away you feel part of something, which you don't always have essentially within business as well. When you get someone who is a new starter or you get someone who is new to that business, there's not always let's run around and make sure that that person feels as part of the team and is welcome.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few WhatsApp groups that knock around in cybersecurity. There's the CISO groups and things like that. And I've heard some weird stories about them, to be quite honest. You know, where somebody is describing a situation, naming no names, but somebody's worked out the company they're talking to and they've gone back to the company to kind of grass them up and things. And I just think that you're not fostering... You wouldn't do that in real life, right? You wouldn't do that if you stood in front of people. Yeah. So why start doing it on the... Why be an arsehole over the internet, to be quite honest?
We're all competing for...
And plus, it's faceless. It's the whole keyboard warrior thing. You can go on there and write what you want and be completely anonymous.
Do you know what's interesting, Ian? You just brought up on the average tenure, and you're probably spot on, 18 months, potentially 2 years if we're lucky. But do we think, though, that, like... And this, I certainly have my opinions on this, is, like... the inclusiveness within an organisation or being able to fail fast. I think this is like a really important thing. I think at times there's such an expectation of, oh, you know, we've just brought you in on this salary and this job title, or you're doing this or whatever it might be within, whether it's a vendor or a customer, whether it's whatever organisation, it's not necessarily within security as a vendor. It's, we brought you in with high expectations and you failed at one project or you haven't done well at that project. Then at that moment, I think that's a really, really important inflection point to whether the company's going to foster a culture to allow them to learn and grow.
Yeah, people aren't allowed to fail anymore with anything. People are not allowed to fail. You think that's where some of the biggest lessons
100%.
Are learned. But then because you're not allowed to fail, so you've got person A comes in, takes a job. They fail, they get sacked. The next person comes in, takes the same job, but now they're starting from that point again. So then that person might fail at something. Whereas if you've got someone at that job and you allow them to fail and remediate that situation for the next project and then the next project, you're going to start, like the amount of things that every time you go to redo it, you do it better because you found a way to, oh, I didn't actually need to take that step. I can go and do this thing here. But you don't have that. People literally aren't allowed to fail. And it is that scapegoat culture where if there is a breach, before, and I've seen companies, before they've even tried to figure out how to remediate that breach, they go, it's that person's fault, they've been sacked, because it makes everyone else feel better.
Well, we almost expect that like a breach happens at a company, and there's two things that happen. You get ambulance chasers, first and foremost. It's been on the paper, bang, let's hit the phone. And the second one is, oh, the CISO's job's on the line.
Yeah.
And I just look at that and go, wow. So first and foremost, you think that all of a sudden, because a breach has happened, that person or that company is reacting and going to buy every single piece of technology in the world. Yeah. And secondly, oh, wow, the CISO is going to lose their job.
Yeah.
Well, let's because there's a parallel there, bringing it back to footy. There's a parallel there of managers losing their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So prior to the manager losing it or potentially losing their job, you have the ambulance chasers in the form of those fat, sweaty blokes in the stand who criticise the manager,
or on the sofa,
or on the sofa, who get out of breath standing up, and they think they're as good as a manager or a pro who's playing.
So you're hitting a point there now, because it is a team sport, if you like, with IT security, with security generally. It is a team, and I've always found that weird as well, where they get rid of a manager because the players didn't do well.
Yeah.
And you could be a manager and give out the best. You can give out a plan where even if it does work or doesn't work, but you're not on the field.
You're hitting an even stronger point as well, because think about, and we're hearing rumours and stories in Premier League football, for example, where chairmen have been in the dressing room, or whoever it may be in the organisation, people picking the team or telling them that, oh, we've paid a lot of money for that player, you've got to play that player, whether they're out of form or not. Then you go back to like the CISO. How much control does that person actually have on the security organisation, the budget? What are they getting? Like, it's a black hole in that perspective. It could be in so many aspects there of, well, do they have the control? Is it all under their control yet? Like, same as a manager in football, do they have the control?
That again is whether the CISO is a CISO without portfolio or not, or whether they've actually got a role and an active voice, and that comes down to experience. So if you're Chelsea's a perfect example, right? Graham Potter, great manager, didn't do well for 8 or 9 games, got rid of him, has now got Frank Lampard in to steady the ship, still getting beat left, right and centre. But they're going to keep Frank to the end of the season and stuff like that. So Frank is that kind of like that interim CISO. Graham was the great hope they brought in. But they've had a long, steady stream of just getting rid of manager after manager after manager when success doesn't happen. And I think it comes down to stability. It comes down to having time to mould your team into the way you want them to behave.
Which takes time. You have to...
Yep.
I think it was it like Man U with Alex Ferguson, where it took time to get into that winning mentality.
4 years they gave
and
them.
once they did it, it was like...
Look at the success.
They won everything.
Yeah.
And you did. And a lot of people as well, it has become about covering yourself.
Yeah.
So I know of IT managers, I know of CISOs, so remember the birth of GDPR? Where no one took it seriously.
No one gave a damn.
No one cared at all. And there was an IT manager I used to deal with, and he knew the risks, he knew what was meant to be done, but because the business wasn't behind him, all he could do was send an email just so it was on paper. This is what's happening. This is what we need to do. This is what I think we should do. If we don't do it, this is going to happen. Now it's up to you. And the moment that email got put through, now everyone else is like, well, I know about it now. So if anything does happen, well, I told you.
Well, what you're saying there as well is the old age of, we don't know there's a problem until the problem happens.
Yeah.
And then reality is we're just picking up the mess.
Yeah.
We're just picking up the mess. And it's the same with, like, again, go back to football. You're just picking up the mess. You're just creating the problems. New manager, Frank Lampard, comes in. Well, the reality is they're going to have to go back to square one. They're going to have to hire the new manager. They're going to have to bring it round again. And
going back to square one isn't necessarily a bad thing because you know more now.
yeah, you do know. No, but at the same time, if you think about it, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to Chelsea this season? They're going to finish mid-table. Could they have seen a potential outcome? Now, we don't necessarily see behind the scenes, but giving Graham time to build that culture. We go back to cultures again. It's that culture doesn't happen overnight. Being able to fail fast, learn and grow. Imagine what he's learned this season, that he will ultimately go and actually implement that elsewhere.
Yeah.
He doesn't become a bad manager overnight. No. And the weird thing is that they replace him with somebody whose track record is woeful.
Yeah, it's poor.
He's probably a lovely fella, and he was a great footballer. As a manager, I mean, he almost took Everton down.
Almost. It could still happen.
Yes, could still.
So where does all of that leave us? What are the issues now that we're finding from a professional standpoint?
I think there's two things which we've been left with. And look, like, the industry today and over the last 12 months is crosshairs would probably be a good word to use there. Like, we've definitely learned a few lessons. Let's say that. I think there's two things which really sit paramount for me. Is one, there's been a lot of burnout in the industry. Burnout's come through the pandemic when you think people are doing, digital transformation in 4 weeks. Those 4-year strategies were done in 4 weeks. Now, great, like, we learned that we could implement strategies very quickly, which is great, and probably shows that execution should be prioritized over strategy a lot of times. Security teams were overwhelmed. There's a lot of different things. You can imagine that once fortress you built around the office is now being completely disappeared, and we've had to completely rebuild that security posture, if you will, around where we now are working, which is commonly at home or wherever it may, WeWorks or wherever it may be. So security teams are left overwhelmed, burnt out in a lot of times. Like there was a fact that I saw around the exit route. 35-year-olds in security, been in the industry for 5 years, are all planning, like I think it was 82% were planning an exit route out of security, which is just unbelievable to me. I'm like, why would people want to leave the industry? Why would people want to? But then when you dig down, you're like, oh yeah, like you've been asked to do 10 people's jobs with 2 people.
Well, burnout is one of Ian's favourite topics.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. So I want to give some perspective here, right? So I don't. We all know it's not a thing just for cybersecurity, right? We know burnout is across the board, and I think the pandemic has slightly heightened it. So I don't really want to focus on the pandemic and burnout, but there's been burnout before, and then there's burnout. We're a couple of years past the pandemic now, and people are still talking about burnout, and I'm kind of like, get over it. Not that you're not feeling burnout. I don't want people's mental health for me to think I'm poo-pooing their mental health or anything like that.
You what?
Poo-pooing. Can I not poo-poo on somebody's mental health?
Stop poo-pooing on people.
Why not? Why can't I poo-poo on them?
This is like worse than punching people in the face.
This is much worse. I'd rather be punched in the face than poo-pooed on.
We've given some really good advice today.
Is poo-pooing, is that a thing? What does that mean?
Maybe in Liverpool.
What do you mean? You've never heard of that?
What, poo-pooing?
What's wrong with you?
Are you saying pooing?
No, poo-pooing.
What's poo-pooing?
To denigrate somebody's feelings, to talk down to them on it, to not consider somebody's feelings.
We could just say degrading.
All those people watching now, if you could go into the comments and just put down if you've ever heard of poo-pooing. Or if you've been poo-pooed on.
Or alternative words.
For those who've been poo-pooed on, no comments. Just pictures.
And website links. Secure ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, none of those.
Sent through a secure link.
Yeah. No, but I am so... Because if you start talking about the pandemic, we have to recognise that actually the health industry had a terrible time and all of that stuff, and education, all that stuff, the real people who do real work.
Yeah.
I always think to myself how lucky I am to be in cyber because I'm not digging roads, right? I'm not doing real work in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think
It's
that's
not hard
maybe
graft.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's mental and stuff like that, but it's almost like...
I understand hard graft. It was only yesterday I had to work for an hour and 20 minutes with only a 20-minute break.
Whoa. Hang on a minute.
I'm okay.
Hour and
Are you
20.
sure?
I'll get through it. That's
Sure.
the main thing.
So you did a whole 60 minutes work with a break?
Yeah. It was...
Wow. No, an hour and 20 without the 20-minute break, or did you have the 20-minute
No, I had
break?
to have the 20-minute break.
Okay. In between or at the end?
So we did a 20 minutes, and then we had a 20-minute break, and then the 40.
Wow.
It was tough, but
But you got through it. You're here today. To live the
I'm
faith.
here. And that's, comedian, hero, you pick your title.
Yeah. Was this on your sellout tour?
Yeah, I don't like to bring it up, but my tour is selling out
yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
EmmanuelStandup.com. I'm just throwing that out there. But that's the thing when it comes, because I've always looked at when it comes to things like burnout, because I think with any job you're going to do, if you, it can become very overwhelming to that job, and a lot of it, I think, is can we understand the factors behind the burnout? And you look at the influence behind that. So you've got a manager going, right, I can either employ 3 people for this job and it costs me this, or I can give it to one person and they can effectively do the same task.
I mean, well, we look in the industry as well and look like a lot of companies over the last 12 months have had to reset and had to really reevaluate costs, priorities, etc. But in reality, do we think the expectations have changed on the employees, on the people who are doing the work written down?
Definitely, even down to, so I know of a company that when their staff started working from home, expected more from them because they're saying, well, you haven't got that hour commute to and from, so effectively you could do an extra 2 hours.
Yeah, you can work from 8 till 6, 8 till 7.
You can work, and that's fine because you're already at home. So what are you moaning about? Yeah. You think that's not the way? That's not how it should be, really.
No, it's weird, really, isn't it? Because again, linking it back to football, football managers have proper burnout, right? You got millions and millions of people baying for blood, and really, the best managers I ever played for made me feel relaxed as a player, not under pressure. And I think that's maybe where the burnout comes for a CISO, because I hear about CISO burnout all the time, is where they are providing that buffer between an unreasonable executive and the people who are in their charge. So I can see it then.
Yeah.
It goes to good leadership, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It directly goes to good leadership. When you're put into those positions, I think we all expect that the people we report into, the leaders we have around us, we don't hear every conversation. We don't hear every expectation that comes from the top down. That filter is so important because that drives the right expectations within the organisation. And I think sometimes it gets lost. Sometimes it's when we do reevaluate priorities, it becomes like an open spectrum of this is what we need to do. And we need to do it fast, and we need to do this, and we need to do that. And then everyone across the organisation almost goes into panic mode. And then you see layoffs and you see things like that. And it's like, oh, well, reality is the thought process is my job's on the line. If I don't do more, where am I going to end up?
So what's the answer to all this? Because we've identified problems, we've identified issues, we've identified, even if I can say that word properly, unequivocally, we've identified stuff that annoys us. Yeah. What's the answer?
I think the answer. Look, I don't think we have all of the answers, like to set expectations, but I think like some of the answers really do sit with one, like setting the necessary expectations across the organisation. So when we think about, we're running on an organisation which looks 2/3 of the size it did 12 months ago, for example, it's not expecting the same outputs from that organisation. I think that is so important. Because we are just not going to, with any sector, I don't think this is not, again, exclusive to security at all. We're not going to have the same outcomes with burnt out people or demotivated people. That can just always be demotivation as well. People sit there and go, well, I'm expected to work 12 hours a day to get this done, and I'm not feeling great about this.
So I was going to say that I think because I don't believe there's one single solution.
There's not.
What my original thought was communication and understanding is going to be two very important tools to try and move away from that feeling of burnt out. But a second thought, I think the thing to really look at is balance, because it would be very easy for me to go to speak to a manager and tell them how I'm feeling, here are my expectations. But as a business, they've also got their expectations because they still need to run a business. So you need to find that middle ground and find a bit of balance where the business is getting what they need and the employee is getting what they need from the business. It has to be that coexistent relationship where both parties have found that balance, because you will get people, especially because once you start throwing out a term, there will be people, annoyingly, that will abuse that term.
Of course.
So it is very you'll have someone who'll go, I'm suffering from burnout, and they will genuinely it is really affecting them, and they need that time. So quite rightly, that business may give them a month off, get yourself together, and then come back and be the best person you can. You might see someone else that go, well, I want that.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling burnt out.
It's how you protect that person, though, isn't it, as well? And I think the balance aspect is really important because it goes back to your earlier point around communication. Communicating the priorities from the business, and also not just the priorities, but when we think about reshifting priorities, what aren't the priorities as well? I think sometimes we don't necessarily focus on that. Yeah. So it's like, these are the priorities. These, as a business, these are the top things that we need to achieve. But these are not these may have been priorities 12 months ago, which aren't the priorities today. And sometimes we don't communicate that. So that gets lost on people because people are like, we did that 12 months ago. We should do it again. And then, are we really focusing on what the business needs from us today? So again, I think communication, I would say, is like number one, the most important thing. From the top all the way down the organisation has to be communication.
And even down to things like we discussed it today, culture. So if you look at the culture of most offices, so for example, there's a huge percentage of people that when they start an office-based job, over the course of 12 months, will put on weight.
Yeah.
Because they're sat still all day. I mean, some people never lose it, but they're sat still.
I have feelings too, you know.
They're sat still all day, and they're at the desk, they're at screens, they're not really moving, they're not generating any energy, and you think things like vending machines, or quick lunches.
The office perks.
Yes.
Yeah.
All those quick things aren't doing anything to stimulate any physical health, which in turn can affect someone's mental health.
For sure.
It's the whole notion of what you put in is what you're going to get out. So even down to that as a culture, where if you look at, there's certain places that have like gyms inside, or something where people can go and actually just have a walk for 10 minutes, like clear your head. So I used to do that when I was working in an office. Just once an hour, just go and walk around the block, just move, do something.
Yeah,
Do people have those breaks though anymore? And I don't want to focus on the problems, but I think we can bring those things back.
Definitely.
And that's like, I think you're absolutely spot on. It's like, well, if you're in the office from 9 till 6 and you've got that commute as well, like not judging somebody for stepping out of the office for an hour and everyone looking back at, I'm not saying this necessarily always happens, but looking back at them like, that person's got time for a break when we're working our backside off.
But that's a culture thing, though.
It is culture.
So that's driven from the top down.
Absolutely.
Again. So if you're the manager there, you've got to go in and say, you've got to go in and offer that to people. You've got to go in, listen, I'm not expecting to see you at your desks every hour of the day.
Yeah.
Get up, have a wander, clear your head. If something's not right, you got to let people be people. And I think too many people when they're in a managerial position or a leadership position, don't see it for what it is. They're in charge of they're not in charge of the people. The people are in their charge, and they have to look after the people in their charge.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's what creates. I think sometimes as leaders we expect, or if you're in a leadership position, you look at it and go, well, me do my job well is what makes me a good leader. In reality, that's for me, it's quite far from it. It's actually the culture you build. It's not. You see so many people in certain positions, and they're not necessarily good at the jobs that they're managing people. They're good at managing people. They're good at, they're good at the aspects around building a culture. I had a situation where I had somebody working, and they were on at 10 p.m, 11 p.m, and then back online at 8 o'clock, and I could see they were exhausted. They were just getting their career into security. They could see what was going on.
So you're taking advantage.
I was taking advantage. I was like, you keep working 18 hours a day.
Exactly what you should be doing.
Of course I should. And it's, you're still not working enough. Like, I want those weeks.
10 p.m. You've got 2 more hours, mate.
2 more hours, mate.
2 more hours.
Yeah. And then that Saturday that you got plans, scrap them.
Yeah.
You're back on.
Absolutely.
You're back online. But no, like, the point is like, I turned around and said, look, this isn't going to move the needle. And you're going to be tired, exhausted, and then you get the mistakes happen, and et cetera, et cetera. It rolls out. Identify them early, bed them out, set good, healthy guidelines, and just coach people on that way. But I think that's, again, it comes down to strong leadership. It comes down to people who can identify and manage. Like, going back to where we started on the refereeing aspect, like being able to referee a game of football doesn't mean I would ever be able to play at that level at all, like quite far opposite.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when you're talking about refereeing, you think of the job of a referee is to keep the play smoothly running.
22 players on a pitch plus 2 benches. Every weekend it's exactly the same. It's managing 22 players, managing their expectations of you. That's the big thing.
It's not even just 22 players, is it? You've got the 22 players, you've got the benches, you've got the rest of that support team from them. Yeah. You're really responsible for that entire thing. And it is within very much your control and power to turn how that game might go, which then affects everything around it. Right. So it is a big responsibility.
It's setting the expectations, it's managing those expectations. And again, communication. Ian, you spoke about it earlier around like when you deploy maybe a sense of arrogance onto, whether it's onto a football pitch or whatever it may be, arrogance can have the wrong tone. It rubs off in the wrong way on people because people are like, really? That person thinks a lot of themselves. Yeah. But in reality, if you're just able to communicate with people, have empathy for people, we don't probably have enough of this at times.
Yes, very much so. And it is very much, it's not even, so we'll see this in comedy all the time. It's not what you say. it's how it's said.
Yeah.
And how you're, like, if you're going into that sort of comedy club environment, you could getting a word wrong or presenting a joke wrong will change how that crowd sees you.
Yeah.
So it really much, and it's going to be the same in absolutely everything. How you ask someone a question to do something, depending on how you say it, will dictate how they perceive that and whether or not they even want to.
Yeah. No,
and also as well, people are always going to perceive certain things the wrong way, right? Because that's their personality as well.
Of course it is.
There are people glass half full, glass half empty type things. So, and they're only going to, you do it in your routine where you talk about when somebody comes up to you at the end of the gig, I found that offensive.
Yeah.
And then you draw the parallel to the other offensive stuff that they didn't find offensive.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't be selective there. And it's the same. It's you've got to work with your staff and with not even your staff, with your team that way, whether it's a football team, whether it's a team of analysts or techies or whatever, or salespeople, you've got to get amongst it.
Going with an open mind. I think that's where it's a two-way street. It's like I always say, like, and going to the refereeing example is like, I'm there to do my job, my responsibility to manage the game, manage people's expectations. At the same time, what do I expect from the players? I expect them to just have an open mind.
Yeah.
If they have a perception of me the moment I turn up as, it's another referee, I've got this perception of what a referee is, and we can't talk to him, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. Like, you've already set the expectations. Yeah. Well, I've got to work really hard to change those expectations.
So players do have an expectation of a referee, right? And they have a negative expectation.
Absolutely.
I've never gone into a game and gone, is a great ref here today. Never, not once. But what is really refreshing is where you go into a game and you do something that you would normally expect to maybe be booked to, and the ref will get you and talk to you like a human being, get yourself up, and or if you're trying to give the ref a bit of banter and they come back with a bit of banter instead of being all, it is that two-way street. Players can be arrogant, refs can be arrogant,
It's the same thing with managers as well. Yeah. People have an expectation of what a manager is, and if it's going to be, if you then go to reinforce the negative side of that, that's going to change how that person thinks about you and how they work. Because you think loyalty goes a long way in every single job.
Absolutely.
How somebody will do a task if they are loyal to you is going to be very different. If you go right, I'm going to do this because I know my manager would do this for me.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot. It's going to be a much easier conversation or a much easier task.
Yeah.
And it's going to be therefore an easier task for us to
You're
complete.
passionate about working for people that have your back.
Oh yeah,
and support you and want to grow you in your career, and also have this very openness to say, like, look, we're probably going to, shake hands in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time and say, great, good luck for the next chapter of your career. And having that openness to that person's going to grow and then move on in a good, healthy period of time is...
And actually, they're the best managers I've worked for, who know you're moving on, who know you're at a stage of your career where they can help you get to the next stage of your career, I never fully understand why managers get upset when you decide to make a move, because actually it's not personal. It could be personal. They could be a terrible manager, right? It could be personal, but generally it's not. You're improving your career.
Well, if you stuck around for 3-4 years, it's probably not personal.
Yeah.
It's probably growth.
Yeah, exactly. No.
I think that's really where you're gonna make that big difference, and it is going to be that communication. It's going to be the understanding, and then it's going to be finding that balance. I think if all of those 3 pillars are reached, you're going to be in a position where burnout is less likely.
Yeah.
I agree.
And actually, that good point about just being human, just being human with people. If you just show them a bit of empathy, I'm still not sure what empathy means. I mean, my wife keeps telling me I've got none of it. I don't know whether, can you buy it?
Not everyone has it.
Is there an injection you can get? No, or anything like that. But just being human with people, showing them your non-work face. I always think we have 2 faces, right? We have the work face and we have our outside face.
I call it you have your real self and your CV self.
Yeah.
And the CV self is who you pretended to be in the interview and say you got the job, but it's not. Your real self doesn't come out until after the second Christmas party.
Merging the worlds is, I just a little one was I took my little boy to watch me referee for the first time a few weeks ago. So at the end of the game, as I was I grabbed him, put him over the barriers, and he had the match ball in his hands, and I walked off the pitch with him. And the look of the fans, it was like, oh, that guy's a dad. And instantly, I wasn't the referee. I was
a kidnapper.
Oh, kidnapper. Either one.
They weren't thinking that guy's a dad. That guy just stole it. And the ball.
And humanised me at the same time.
It's the nothing he won't do.
But it's just like humanised me instantly. And
Yeah.
it was just like instantaneously, people looked at me differently.
Do you think it would humanise the football industry if referees came out and explained decisions at the end of games?
It's a great question. So
No,
No?
I don't think so.
I don't.
People, even if you explain it, if my team has just lost,
Yeah.
I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So I've heard it from managers in boardrooms after
Yeah.
games, and this is typically the time where I just walk out as well. But it's like they'll ask,
Don't do that now.
no, not now. But like they have the camera on this game, and that camera downloads in 30 seconds. By the time we've had a shower and got ready, we're going to the boardroom, and it's on that laptop. You just explain, I don't agree with this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And instantly you're in a situation where you're, as you just said, Emmanuel, it's like you are explaining a decision which they don't agree with. So
Yeah.
you can say anything
Yeah.
in the world, try to add a bit of empathy into it, and then
I don't mean the interrogation approach from opposing managers, but I mean like the way the managers come out and say, well, what are your thoughts on the game? You turn around to the referees and go, so what are your thoughts on that?
You need that person to be completely open-minded. So
Yeah.
it depends on the person that's asking the question. Because I've always thought when people ask questions, you're either going into this situation to learn something, which a lot of people don't do. And then you've got people that ask questions where they don't want an answer, they want confirmation of what they already think.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's why that. And even if you go back to the business world, if you're going to ask a manager, like if you're going to manager, go right, why did you do this? If I'm going there going, I don't know why have you done this. Why have you done this? And I'm prepared to take your answer on.
Yeah.
Then that is an open question.
For sure.
If I go in there and go, why have you done this? I'm thinking, I know why you've done this. If you don't give me the answer that I want, I'm just going to go, my manager's a liar.
Yeah.
So that's where that part will come into it. But yeah, we're going to start. I think when it comes to, I think especially as employees, it is very much about communicating your thoughts with whoever is your next level
into an open environment.
Yes, and
Yeah.
then from this way working down now,
Yeah.
is can we listen, and then how can I? It's like if you're from a sales perspective, if I'm speaking to a potential customer, I want to understand everything that you don't like, so I know now what the problem is, and I can like understand that problem and go, right, is there a solution? Where is that middle ground for it? But that's the thing. It is, are people open to listening?
So I think in answer to your question is, and this is where I think the media potentially is an issue there as well. It's, I think from my point of view, if I was refereeing at a higher level, for me it would be, how is this twisted? What could be said on the back of what I've said? When I know, like I have observers coming into my dressing room 15 minutes after the game, and I have 15 minutes to collect my thoughts and then explain my decisions to them. And sometimes that's really hard. Sometimes you need time, just digest, settle down. If I had a camera shoved in front of me 10 minutes after a game, I'm probably not thinking, and I have empathy for managers to have to do that. They've just took a battering, and then they're expected within 5 minutes, tell us about the game. Well, right now, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I may have made a poor decision. I know I've made a poor decision.
Yeah.
Again, do I really want to be in? I think if referees were able to explain decisions later on, 2 to 3 days after, I think that could be positive. And I think the PMGOL has got more opportunity to do that. And I think Howard Webb is starting to do that.
I have no idea what that acronym meant.
I just used it again. Shall I explain it?
What is it? PMGOL?
Professional Match Game Officials List.
Gotcha.
See, it's not even acronyms in security. Even football as well.
Yeah.
He said that and I immediately thought, I need him. Pay him what he wants.
Yeah.
I need him.
Absolutely. What did he do? Don't know.
Don't know.
We'll have it.
It's got a list.
Yeah.
And that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for joining us on TLC Unfiltered. I've been Ian Murphy.
I've been Emmanuel Sanubi, and thank you very much to James for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Catch us next time on TLC Unfiltered. Until then, see you then.
Bye.